Hi, everybody. This is Marion Steff. So I think we have everyone. All people's going to come a bit later, but that's fine. Let me see. I'm just going to take my notes. There we go. So we're very pleased you could join us today. I'm Marion Steff, and I work for the European Disability Forum. I hope you can all hear me well. Questions in terms of content of logistic, don't hesitate to put them in the chat mode. The European Disability is a regional organization of persons with disability. So it means we are DPO and we are based in Belgium. So I'm here with my colleague Raquel, and she's going to be supporting this webinar with the logistic. So the seminar is organized by EDF, and it's just the third one in a series of webinars that we organize part of the Innovation to Inclusion program. So we call it i2i. Some of you have been there for the first, and it was about the presentation of i2i Consortium and what was going to be the activities. The second webinar we had was about the monitoring tool we are going to be using to capture data and makes the link PD, so the Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities, and the Sustainable Development Goals. So i2i is funded by the UK Department for International Development, DFID, and we are delighted today to have about 70 people registered to this webinar. As you may have noticed, it is accessible, meaning we have captioning provided in the chat box. You can see the link there. If you click on it, you will have access to the caption. We have also international sign available right now. Later, this webinar will be accessible on our website. So we have a summary, we'll have the video, and access to all the other webinars as well. So today we're going to have focus on the role of DPOs in international cooperation. And we wanted to focus on that because in the i2i program, we want to make sure that DPOs are included, not just as beneficiary of funding, but also as expert. And that's very much in line with EDF International Cooperation Strategy, where we want to showcase that DPOs can be real and active agents of change. So today we have three wonderful speakers. They're going to tell you more about the topic. For the format, we're going to have each speaker talking about 8 to 10 minutes, and it will be followed by a question that you will ask in a chat box. So I'm really delighted to welcome our first speakers. It's someone I had the pleasure to meet on a number of bases, and her name is Mary Grace Asian. So Grace is actually a program officer at Women Challenge to Challenge in Kenya. Grace has a long experience in the field of disability. For instance, she's been a disability champion on sexual reproductive health rights, or for menstrual hygiene management of women and girls with disability. She's also served on different school and church boards in Kenya, and she's now the disability director in a church, in addition to all her daily work. So she's a very busy woman. So Women Challenge to Challenge is a DPO that is actively involved in the i2i program. Today, Grace will speak about the role of Kenyan DPOs in international cooperation, and she will also mention a visit to Brussels in December when she came to visit EDF during the European Disability and Development Week. So, Grace, the floor is yours. I'm just gonna, I realize that I'm saying the floor is yours, but Grace is now offline because she's, I guess, her connection is not so good. So that's okay. What we're gonna do, we're gonna go straight to our second speaker, and I hope Catherine is ready. So Catherine is actually the director of the European Disability Forum, and she's also the vice president of the social platform. So again, another very busy woman. Catherine has an academic background in public health, and 20 years of experience in the field of disability, with a particular focus on inclusive development, the right of persons with disability in low and middle income countries. So Catherine has worked in many countries and at the EU and international level in promoting the inclusion of persons with disability in mainstream development and humanitarian program. So today, Catherine will speak about the new guidance notes EDF just published on the role of European DPOs in international cooperation. So Catherine, the floor is yours, and I see you are still online, so no problem with the internet. I'm gonna unmute you. Catherine, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you really well. I have a PowerPoint presentation that is being put right now. So Catherine, you have about 10 minutes.
Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be part of this webinar this morning and take part in the whole discussion and hear from the other speakers as well. As Marion mentioned, EDF developed a guidance note on the role of DPOs in international cooperation. We adopted a strategy last year on international cooperation to better clarify for ourselves what we do in this field. And one of the elements of this strategy, Objective 4, is to promote the engagement of DPOs in international cooperation. Of course, our main policy frameworks for this are the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which, as probably most of you know, has specific articles, especially Article 4.3, which calls for the meaningful involvement of persons with disabilities in all matters that concern them. And we also, of course, have all working on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We start with the guidance note because we knew that many of our members and organizations in Europe have been very actively involved in international cooperation, but there was little knowledge about their activities, and we wanted to collect that and analyze it a little bit so we could start to bridge the existing gap that is there. Ultimately, of course, EDF's aim is that the European Union itself, in all of its external policies and programs, is fully inclusive and accessible to persons with disabilities. And we think that engagement of DPOs in Europe on advocacy at European level, and of course, most importantly, in the countries in which the EU delegations are actually working all around the world outside Europe. In order to start this work, first we made on our website, which you would be able to find, a page which described the project itself. We did an open call for good practice, so people could send us some information, because we thought we know what some of our members do, but we don't know what all DPOs in Europe and in this region do. We also did a call for tenders for consultants to help us with the work, and we selected some consultants who helped us both facilitate the workshop and also document the good practice. So we had Mark Harrison from the UK and Mustafa At, based in the UK, who helped us do the work. And we had the opportunity through this project, which we had in Brussels on June the 3rd, which brought together EDF members and partners who wanted to share their experience and explore more the opportunities and challenges for DPOs working in international. And there's a report of that workshop which is available also on our website. So I wanted to just go fairly quickly to what we learned in the assessment of the good practice, but also in discussing with the participants in our workshop and subsequently discussing more with our members who work in depth in international cooperation. So the first guidance, positive guidance we have for anyone wanting to work in disability inclusive international cooperation is to respect the unique role of DPOs. So it's often not clear, maybe to a donor agency or a mainstream development organization, what DPOs are there for and what they do, so that they should allocate time and resources to understand the role of DPOs, to meet with them, to find out about their work and their objectives, and also to see how they can request their input as trainers and experts, to have them as actors in their work. It was seen that sometimes the DPO role is not considered throughout the whole.
Please ensure you are traveling in the correct part of the train.
All the way. Sorry, I hear a little bit of
10.
Is this happening on my computer? Is that somehow gone?
We are now approaching West Norwood. Please note that you can only alight from the front.
Okay, just
Nothing else is coming out of my computer though.
okay, just try again. I'm going to mute.
Hi, Catherine.
Okay.
Hi, I'm sorry, I was muted by Raquel there. I apologize to everyone because there seemed to be some other noise coming on my computer, but we didn't find the source of it.
Okay.
So
All right.
then also an important guidance was to make budgetary provisions for the involvement of DPOs. So that would, an example of that would be if you are planning consultation meetings, that you would include travel costs, that you would make sure that for all the activities where you expect a DPO involvement, you would do these, you would make a budget available to ensure that the activities were accessible and that costs could be covered for accessibility and reasonable accommodation. But it also means that the DPOs themselves receive budget for the activities that they're supposed to conduct within the project, that they would not be expected to be, you know, working for free. There should be some formal partnership with DPO, whether a memorandum of understanding that's written in an MOU, or funding for DPOs if they're expected to actually conduct activities within the project, and to make sure that their role and participation are clearly explained, that they fully understand how they are going to be involved. And then what we saw as well is that the best examples had a long-term engagement. So they were not just a 3-month project or a 6-month project or even a 2-year project, but the most positive experience that our members had were where there was possibility for cooperation for a longer period of time. And the cooperation is not limited to just a grassroots activity or the advisory body, but the participation of DPOs can be at every level of the project. Another element which often comes up is that DPOs don't have the capacity. This is something which we often hear. And it's true that if you consider very large programs, like very big European programs, or maybe different programs where the partners seem to need a very big, high administrative or financial capacity, that it might not seem possible for very small organizations who don't have that sort of admin capacity to take part. But it's clear that this can also be used as an opportunity to build capacity, to have activities for smaller organizations with a reasonable amount of support and capacity building to participate. So the bigger programs can be used as an investment for capacity building rather than as a reason to exclude. So we have a list of things to be cautious about, and these were all based on people's experiences of things that had happened in their involvement in mainstream development or humanitarian programs. So do not use DPOs for information sharing only. Disseminate your findings. Do not involve DPOs without providing adequate financial resources. So we often find that we're asked, this happens to EDF really, really regularly, where we're asked to provide a lot of input, reviewing documents, participating in advisory meetings, but no finances are foreseen for that. So DPOs are often expected to work for free. And sometimes it's very strategic for you to be participating and giving input, but if that's expected over a 3 to 5 year program, it should be properly financed. Do not ask DPOs to carry out your priority actions only. So this is something which also has been happening, where DPOs are asked to do a particular project on a certain activity. So I had the example in a meeting we had on this topic last year, where somebody from one of our network members said that they were asked to do a project on water and sanitation. And the project was really good, but the more work they put into it, the more the members questioned, because their members had other priorities. The organization and the partner agreed to change the orientation of the project so that the DPO's priorities could be included. Do not take the place of European DPOs in key discussions about disability. Do not take the place of any DPOs. So if, for example, advocacy is taking place towards the Egyptian government on the CRPD, and you're working with DPOs in the country on this, it's really important, if you're doing the advocacy element, that the DPOs have a very active and leading role in that they have a chance to discuss directly with their government what kind of policy need to take place. Do not engage in only a short-term or once-off basis. So even maybe you might start with small activities, but they should be building towards larger, longer-term cooperation. And do not, whenever possible, fund a single DPO with a smaller mandate. This came from some examples where in a country, the umbrella organization didn't have any partnership or support, and maybe some smaller DPOs working on very specific issues did have, and then that has a negative impact on the basically on the shared voice and the joint advocacy of the federation, the national federation, the umbrella organization. So what this advice is about is looking at, if you're working in a specific country and you fund a very small DPO working on one topic, consider how you can also support the national federation in their advocacy. So from our examples that you can read on our website, we saw a range of roles from our members, from European DPOs in international cooperation and advocacy to their own governments for inclusive development. So for example, the work that EDF would do in promoting the inclusion of the CRPD in the EU's external cooperation policies and programs, implementation and monitoring of the CRPD, awareness raising, capacity building and empowerment, capacity building of DPOs on the CRPD. And then there were other projects around inclusive employment, inclusive education, networking, and emancipatory research. So there was a very wide range of experiences that our members and partners had. So in conclusion, the first reflection that we have ourselves is that we did this guidance note very quickly. We include our members here in Europe. We did not include in this first workshop DPOs from the Global South. There was limitations in terms of time and resources. And so we're very honest in saying our guidance note really brings the reflection of our members, European DPOs and partners, rather than DPOs from the Global South. So this is something that in the next step we need to do, because the perspective of EDF on cooperation with DPOs from the Global South will of course be different from the reflections that our partners in the Global South would have. So our message to our partners is on rethinking development cooperation and the role that DPOs can play, to see many more possibilities for including DPOs either in their advocacy work in Europe or in their international cooperation work around the world. And we intend to continue the conversation and at the next point discuss this together with our partner networks in the Global South. In particular, we have sister organizations that are regional DPOs from right around the world who we want to continue this cooperation. Thank you very much all for your time.
Catherine, thank you so much. This is really interesting. And then we have already a number of questions. One of them is like, what do you see, what is the role between European DPOs and DPOs in the South? How the collaboration should be?
Well, I'll give one example. So in the work that EDF does, promoting the inclusion accessibility for persons with disabilities in international cooperation efforts, is we try, for example, when we want to have this included in the next European Disability Strategy, we reach out to our other partners, to the Africa Disability Forum, the ASEAN Riatas, the Pacific, and ask them to give their views on what we're advocating for and to sign up and to jointly advocate with us. So we're also trying in our work, where possible, in projects to include moments for DPOs from the Global South to come to Brussels and work directly with the European policymakers themselves. So to give them a chance to share their views and perspectives, like we intend to do in the i2i project. So I think it is our responsibility to make sure that we as EDF provide as many opportunities as possible for DPOs around the world to give their views to the EU. That's just in our domain specifically.
Thank you, Catherine. And then what's going to be the next step after that? Nana, did you have the guidance notes? What's going to happen next for EDF?
Well, we want to include this work in the, we have our international cooperation strategy, which has this element as part of it. So in all of the activities we're doing in international cooperation, we have this intention, where possible, to strengthen the role of DPOs from the Global South. So this will be a sort of cross-cutting activity for us. And then we have in the i2i project, which we're discussing now, where we hope to work closely with the DPOs in Bangladesh and in Kenya on that particular activity. So it should be cross-cutting across all of our work.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. I'm conscious of the time, so I'm already gonna stop there for the question, and I'm sorry about that. I just also wanted to say that EDF will be organizing an international cooperation conference on the 29th of February, and you are in Brussels, you're of course welcome to attend, but it will be live streamed, so we will circulate the link if anybody else wants to join online. Catherine, thank you so much. And I'm already going to go to our next speaker, which is Grace. I see Grace is back online. Grace, I already introduced you, and so I'm going to already right away give you the floor. So I'm going to unmute you. And I don't know why I cannot unmute you. Maybe Raquel, can you check? Okay, so Grace, I send you an unmute request. Can you unmute yourself? So we're going to be, oh, here we go. Grace, the floor is yours. You've got
I've done
10.
so. I've done so. Okay, thank you so much, Marion. Sorry for the inconveniences because of the network is not so good where I am. And I hope you can hear me now.
We can hear really well.
Okay, my name is Grace Achieng from Kenya. I work with an organization called Women Challenge to Challenge. This is a women-led community-based organization which has been in existence since the year 2000 and is registered under the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. The pioneers of this organization are women with disabilities who, other than disabilities, they realized that the discrimination was of a higher magnitude for women with disabilities. For this reason, Women Challenge to Challenge brought together women with different disabilities in Kenya with the aim of empowering them so that they can generate one voice to address matters affecting their lives, their livelihood. Women Challenge to Challenge concentrate so much on addressing disabilities issues within a right-based and evidence-based perspective, which identifies disability as a social development issue. We cover different counties in Kenya. We are based in Nairobi. Our main office is in Nairobi, but we have members in Kiambu, Baringo, Kakamega, Busia, Narok, Meru, Migori, and Nyeri. And Challenge to Challenge is represented with members who are differently. We have different disabilities like deaf, visually impaired, physical challenge, mental, is to be just, participatory, empowered, and sustainable living for disabled women. Our mission is to improve lives of women and girls with disabilities, build their capacity, raise awareness, advocacy, development programs, and economical empowerment. I think that is good for the introduction.
Thank you, Grace. Yes. So can you tell us more about you visiting Belgium with the rest of the i2i consortium, and also the role of Kenyan DPOs in international cooperation?
Our visit to Belgium was a big challenge, excitement. It was the first time, especially for me, to come to Belgium. But the DPOs in Kenya are not like funded directly. The DPOs in Belgium, like the Belgium, are more empowered than us. It's like they have powers, they can make.
Grace, I'm so sorry, but we don't hear you. The connection is really bad. Is there anything you can do from your side? Oh, Grace, can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Okay, let's try again, because the connection is not good. So I don't know if, well, let's try again.
Now?
Well, speak and I will know.
Oh. All right. I was saying that I was so excited to be in Belgium. It was my first time there. Is that better?
Yeah, it's better. Yeah. And we were excited to have you there.
Thank you. But the challenges we saw were that the DPOs in Belgium are more empowered. But in Kenya, most of the times, the funders or sponsors always want to go through bigger organizations to support the DPOs, which is a problem. And be it that the DPOs are the people on the ground that knows a lot of issues that are affecting women and girls with disabilities, or even all persons with disabilities. So in Belgium, and we are praying that something can happen that start funding them directly.
Yeah, because so what we have to explain to our audience is that, so you came with the delegation from other DPOs from Kenya and Bangladesh. And then it was during the European Disability and Development Week, and we had a week plan of activities. Can you tell us more about the other Kenyan DPOs and how how they appreciated the trip, or the learning maybe that you had together when you brainstorm about the trip afterwards all together?
Marion, I'm very sorry, this network is letting me down. I didn't hear you well. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Will you, okay, I see you even, okay, what I'm gonna do if you want, I'm gonna explain a little bit of the week you had in Belgium, and then if you can hear me, then you can complement. Will that be okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just taking my notes. So so in December we had about, let me just check. We had about 5-6 people from Kenya and Bangladesh. So we had from Kenya, we had the director of Deaf Empowerment of Kenya, Joseph Gary. We had the chief executive of the Kenyan Union of the Blind, Jackson. And we also had your colleague, Jane, also the director of Women Challenge to Challenge. So that was the colleague from Kenya. And from Bangladesh, we had Nasreen from the Disabled Child Foundation, as well as Shireen from a Women with Disability Development Foundation. And really the objective of that week was to bring the voice of Kenyan and Bangladeshi DPOs to an international stage. So we really wanted to also strengthen the partnership between i2i DPOs and European DPOs. So we made sure that when we organized the week, the i2i delegation came during the European Disability and Development Week, and they had the opportunity to meet, for instance, with the European External Action Services. And you might know, so the EEAS is actually taking part of, well, actually supporting all the EU delegation around the world. And if I'm not mistaken, we've got about 192 EU delegation around the world that works in different countries. So we do think in Belgium, when we work at headquarters on trying to influence the work that's been done around disability, that needs to reach the EU delegation around the world. So for instance, the Bangladeshi delegation from the European Union is really big. We also had a reception in the evening on the role of DPOs in international cooperation. So the guidance notes that Catherine presented was also launched. And so we had a very interesting speaker, including the World Bank, because the World Bank has their own strategy on disability. And the delegation attended a Bridging the Gap seminar. Bridging the Gap is another project in Africa and South America. And it was focusing on disability mainstreaming in development cooperation. In particular, the next EU disability strategy. So the European Union is going to have a new strategy on disability. It's been approved in February. And so it would be really important to make sure that international cooperation is in the new EU disability strategy, but that we work with our partners in different countries, other DPOs, to make sure that DPOs from the Global South and also the views of UN DPOs are included. And Grace was referring of the fact she met other DPOs. So she had the pleasure to meet Autism Europe, the Belgium Disability Forum, ENIL, the European Network of Independent Living, the European Union of the Deaf, and the European Solidarity Corps. So I think that's where they managed to like really exchange, and where Grace was talking about the fact that DPOs are really empowered and have a word to say when it comes to advocacy. So I'm gonna give the floor to Andrew. I see, Grace, you're still there. Is that okay? Did I summarize the week accurately? And I don't know if you can still hear me.
You did, but I was hearing some I was hearing some. My network is horrible. I'm very sorry, Marion.
But no, it's okay. I absolutely nothing to apologize for, and it's no problem whatsoever. So if you, I'm just going to remind everybody in the audience, if you have any question, don't hesitate to put them in a question box, and I will ask the question. I'm going to give the floor to Andrew, and hopefully the sound is a bit better. I would like to introduce Andrew. So Andrew Crocklin, and I'm sorry if it's a really bad pronunciation, Andrew. So you are the senior advisor at the Norwegian DPOs called Atlas Alliance. You have worked many years in various NGOs like the Rainforest Foundation and the WWF. So Andrew will speak today about a new consortium called Together for Inclusion, which is funded by NORAD. NORAD is the agency focusing on international development in Norway. So that new consortium is a new initiative and is bringing together Norwegian DPOs and mainstream organization in a way that's never been done before. So it's really new, and then Andrew's going to tell us about all that. And Andrew, you've got about 10 minutes for your presentation. I'm just going to unmute you. There you go.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Marion. Good morning, everybody. Good to be with you. Just a short introduction first to the Atlas Alliance. We are an umbrella organization consisting of approximately 14 Norwegian DPOs, and we have the contact with NORAD, which is the Norwegian Agency for Overseas Development Aid. And we get an annual grant, which we then distribute to our member organizations, and they then have contracts with DPOs in the Global South, basically in Africa. We have been at this work since 1981, and as you know, Norway has a good track record when it comes to ODA, also given that the Norwegian organizations have managed to make the state basically guarantee that 1% of the gross domestic product every year is put aside for ODA. And as our gross domestic product seems to grow every year, that means there is more money available for good causes. But funnily enough, since our inception in 1981, what we've seen is that Norway has lagged behind when it comes to putting money into inclusive development for one reason or the other. This, of course, we have pinpointed in various reports we've written and seminars we've had, and slowly but surely the Norwegian government also has come around to understand that if we are to fulfill the promises of the SDGs, we have to make sure that no one are left behind. And that means that we have been able then to make the government put aside larger grants specifically targeted at disability issues. Now, instead of putting that money into our coffers and doing it the normal way, as we do with our annual grants, we said that why don't we make a new consortium where the DPOs in Norway join forces with some of Norway's largest and most reputable NGOs to deliver a new program. What we want to do then is to combine the reach and development expertise of the large NGOs with a rights-based approach and the specific knowledge of the DPOs. And we want to put persons with disabilities in the driver's seat and aim to reach the most marginalized with organizational capacity building, disability rights advocacy, inclusive education, and economic empowerment projects. And this new Together for Inclusion, the TOFI Consortium, is then concentrated the next 4 years on partner organizations and projects in Mozambique, Nigeria, Somalia, South Sudan, and Uganda. What we hope to achieve with this is, of course, a larger outreach, better results, because as you all know, project work and social change is a long and cumbersome road to walk down, and money is part of the solution, but not the only solution. And of course, the more money you pour into a organization or a country, the more challenges you also will have with transparency issues, due diligence issues, and money not seeping through where it was meant to seep through. So we put a lot of emphasis also on evaluation and monitoring. But what this new consortium has showed us, and I think promises, is that a country like Norway now is on board, let's say, the international ship which is sailing towards 2030 and the fulfillment of the SDGs. There will be a new strategy on marginalized groups and persons with disabilities, probably finished this year. And we see this as a follow-up of some of the good work which has been done by the UN institutions and their disability strategy, and also some of the very good work which was done during the Global Disability Summit in London in 2018. We don't know yet, but we are also lobbying for a Global Disability Summit to be held here in the Nordic countries, hopefully next year. We'll just see how that works out. But so all in all, the new TOFI initiative is something we are very positive to, and we see this as having won over the, let's say, the government, in the sense that they now understand that resources have to be put into disability issues, both mainstream and specific issues, and we are then happy to be the lead in this consortium. Yes, I think that is the main message from Oslo.
Thank you, Andrew. That's very interesting. We just wondering, what is the collaboration you have with the national DPOs in Norway, and how do they work in international cooperation?
Yes, well, we are owned. The Atlas Alliance is owned by the Norwegian DPOs. So there is a board which decides the direction and the strategy. And of course, the Atlas Alliance then has the international arena as our workplace, whereas the owners, of course, they do advocacy work on national issues. And of course, Norway being a very developed country, there are still a huge amount of issues pertaining to disability questions. Universal design and all that hasn't come very far. And there are lots of issues on the CPRD being included in Norwegian laws and stuff like that. So they do that national advocacy on national issues, whereas the Atlas Alliance does the advocacy on international issues.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Can you come back a little bit with the time frame of activities for the new consortium?
Yes, this is sort of a pilot project, and it is a 4-year project which will run until the end of 2022. And there will be evaluations underway, and hopefully we'll see this consortium being longer lived than that, and hopefully also being enlarged.
That's very well. Thank you. Let me see, because we're receiving a number of questions and I realize they're coming from two different chat box. The chat box related to the GoToWebinar, but the chat box also on the captioning. So I think I have a question there, and is for all our speakers, and is someone based in, I'm assuming is someone based in Mozambique, explaining that DPO faces many challenges from lack of funding opportunities and low education level within their members. So they have maybe some difficulty to play a strong role in advocacy for the right of person with disability. So how can we support those DPOs? And I don't know who wants to take the floor. I'm gonna unmute Grace and Catherine. And Grace, would you like to respond to that, or Catherine, or? Catherine, I cannot unmute you. You have gonna have to do it yourself. So.
Okay.
Oh, hello, Catherine. We even see you now. Oh,
that was Raquel who turned that on. It wasn't my intention to be seen.
Okay, but you look very nice. Big smile. So yeah, so I'm just going to ask the question again. Is someone probably based in Mozambique saying DPOs face many challenges. They have little funding opportunities. Sometimes there's low education level among the members, and they don't have always the capacity to play a strong role in advocacy. So how can we try to work on these challenges? Grace, would you like to? Or Catherine or Andrew?
Yes, sure. Yes, I mean it's a very valid question, and I think that DPOs face basically the same challenges like any NGO in many countries in the global south, that there is little funding available and maybe weak organizational structures and a hostile political environment. And it is important for any organization in a country like Mozambique to have capacity building programs being undertaken. And it is very important to build organizations, to understand how an organization ideally should function, transparency issues, how to make lobby plans, how to make media campaigns, how to do outreach both locally and at a national level. And it is especially important to try to reach various political parties in the system which is in place. That is basically the same as we do here. You have to have efforts and plans, you know, for 1 year, for several years, in order to build trust within the system.
I could come in as well with something complimentary. Thank you, Andrew, for answering. Of course, this is a concern everywhere. The fact that people's organizations, whether it's DPOs, parents' organizations, women's rights groups, human rights defenders, that often the organizations that are fighting for rights and inclusion of people don't have enough resources to do their work. And especially for DPOs, this is, we know, is the case. From our point of view in EDF, we see one of our roles is to make sure that the EU fulfills its responsibilities. So, for example, at the moment, the European Union is developing its next budget for international cooperation, and we're trying to ensure that the language and the regulation which defines the budget creates obligations, so that the funding has to be given to promote inclusive, accessible programs, that there will be support to civil society, so at least in the rules put forward by the government. But of course, afterwards, when it comes to, for example, a call for proposals from the European Union in Mozambique, it's not always easy for organizations to make applications, because the work, even just to develop an application, can be very heavy amount of work. So I think another area that we want to do is to see how better to make tools so that DPOs can engage with and develop a relationship with the EU delegation in your country. So firstly, that the EU delegation would know the diversity of DPOs that are there, what their priorities are, how they could work with them and include them. They may naturally, it was brought up by Grace. Grace already said that funders grow through the big organizations and not local DPOs. And we know that what Grace has said exists in Kenya is also a very common phenomenon. And maybe part of the strategy in Mozambique can be look at who those big organizations are that are running programs, maybe members of the International Disability and Development Consortium who have programs and offices in your country. Maybe you can go and discuss with them, tell them about your priorities, kind of cooperation they're doing with local organizations, and see if you can also partner with them. It may not be your strategy, you may not want to do it, but it's an option to start to build relationships with those organizations, but also to build we hope to help as well with this building cooperation with the EU delegation. So this is one of the pieces of work that we've planned within EDF's international cooperation strategy, because we know that where the funding is coming, it's from the local delegations. And that's obviously, I remember being years ago at a meeting with DPOs in Rwanda, and one of the members of the local organizations said it was easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for a DPO to receive funding from the European Union. So this is something that we're aware of and something that we hope to work on as well.
Thank you, Catherine. Grace, I don't know if you're gonna
Yes.
you can hear me well, but we have a question directly for you, which is someone is asking you, what is your perspective on the role of NGOs in supporting DPOs? Grace, are you there? Can you hear me? We really have difficulty with the connection in Kenya. So in any case, if you feel like you haven't got all the answer you wanted, you can always send me an email and I will send that to our speakers.
I have
I
a
wanted
proposal as well, Marion, that we could also ask Grace some questions via email and add them to the report of the webinar, so she could express her views on those things, because I know the
very good point. That's a very good point. Grace, I think we could hear you again.
Yeah, I also wanted to tell you that because of the network where I am, can you ask me all the questions through the mail, then I answer, then maybe you can add it, because I am hearing some of the words you people are getting lost, and it's a bit frustrating.
Oh, we all went through that, so that's fine. We will send you the question if we feel like we haven't got all the answer today. So maybe the other speakers, Andrew or Catherine, can come back to the question that was asked directly to Grace. But what's the perspective of what is the role on NGO? What is the role of NGO in supporting DPOs? Andrew, would you like to?
Sure. Sure. I think it goes two ways. NGOs might have money and they might have some experience, which is very good to share with DPOs. And on the other hand, the DPOs should and can influence NGOs to become basically more inclusive. That is what we hope with our consortium, that there is a two-way communication here. Some of the major NGOs like Plan and Save the Children here in Norway have some good track records when it comes to educational efforts for young girls and stuff like that. And if we make them more inclusive in the way they act in local communities, then we'll have done good outreach. So it's a two-way communication here, I think.
And I would come in afterwards as well, just to say that this is something that came up a lot in our discussions when we developed our guidance note. And some of the points in the guidance note about what not to do would be something that we will disseminate also to NGOs, because NGOs can have, we saw examples of NGOs having a very supportive long-term capacity building role, but also NGOs, and don't know how, always DPOs work as representative organizations. So the kind of, that list that I had of what not to do, like don't replace the DPOs in their advocacy work, don't just ask the DPOs to do your priorities. I think they can be very useful so that NGOs also have a bit of a better idea how to create a good, strong collaboration with DPOs. Because all those do nots were based on what experiences our members had. They were based on real experiences where they had felt that the cooperation with the NGOs or the agency hadn't really led them to be stronger or more effective, but it had also some negative consequences.
Let me also add that here in Norway, the Atlas Alliance twice a year run courses for mainstream NGOs. On the first course would then be on general disability issues, and the second would be specifically on inclusive education. And in that sense, we hope to sensitize, if you like, major NGOs in order to become more disability inclusive.
That's a very good idea. Has it been running for a long time?
Yes, I think it's been running for 3-4 years, and basically the courses are very well received, and people come out from the courses, with shining eyes and sort of having seen the light. We didn't know that this was an issue, or we hadn't understood that it could be done also by us. We thought it was very difficult, but yes, they have sort of seen reality in a new light, I'd say.
And then, so I've got a new question coming. So someone's asking, so what role can mainstream NGOs have? Is there any? Andrew or Catherine or Grace?
Well, I mean, mainstream NGOs.
I'll wait for Grace and
yeah. Okay. Well, mainstream NGOs are important social change agents in any country. They have the potential of strengthening civil society and influencing local and central governments. And in that sense, they are very important players. And if we can sort of have them on board on disability issues also, they will become even more important.
Catherine?
So I would as well add that I think lots of mainstream organizations don't even consider themselves to be mainstream organizations. They have focus on specific topics and sectors and expertise. When we're talking about mainstream here, we're talking about non-disability specific. But if you talk about an organization that's focused on water and sanitation, we need them to be involved because they're actually the main interlocutor for the government, for the development of water and sanitation facilities. And within their target group, whatever the mainstream NGO, whether it's a child rights NGO, fighting poverty NGO, within their target group are also people with disabilities, and we want to make sure that they fully include them. So I think their role is really, really important. And the stronger collaboration that we have, the better that they will do their work to include women, men, and children with disabilities within their work. And also using all the leverage that they have So to give an example for here, EDF works to promote the rights of women with disabilities, but the European Women's Lobby is the strongest interlocutor of the European Union on that topic. So their work on that topic is really important, and that they would also fight for the rights of women with disabilities without replacing them, but just to include them within their work fully is super important to achieving equality for women with disabilities.
Thank you. I'm conscious of the time, but we do receive lots of very interesting questions. So I'm just gonna, I need to do a clarification. Someone asked me to clarify in December when we organized a reception, it was actually to launch the DPOs engagement in the i2i program, because the engagement of DPOs in the i2i program is absolutely central to succeed. So I wanted to clarify an apology for my mistake. Andrew, you raised a lot of interest with the work that you're doing with the training, meaning some people are very much interested to see if you could share more information or some content on the training courses that you give to mainstream NGOs. So if you have anything you could send us, Andrew, that would be lovely, and then we can share it with all our participants. And then, oh God, we have a lot more questions, but I'm not going to be able to take them all. We just want more to let you know that participants are your experience related to sustainability, meaning what good practice you have engaged with DPOs in the long run. And if you can share that in a word or two, that would be fantastic. And then we're going to have to stop. So like sustainable experiences of good practices. Oh, Grace, I can see you trying to speak, but we don't hear you. Okay, you muted. I think you know what, we're gonna leave it there because it's 11:02, and then we have to stop. I'm sorry I could not really take that last question out because I was very interesting to hear the answer myself. But in any way, thank you so much for everybody to come today, to the speakers, to Raquel for organizing this webinar, and of course to the captioner, the sign language interpreter, and to all the participants, of course. Thank you so much. So we will send you the PowerPoint presentation as well as the summary of the webinar and the video. So the next webinar will be in 2 months for i2i, and it's mostly be related to gender. So I wish you a lovely day, and thank you again. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Marion, and everyone for your participation. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.